it's just a few seconds. You are, and kind of why you're here. You know, what you're hoping to get out of this. Yeah, this series of mornings, all about Bodhicitta and the Bodhisattva's way. I can start from the top, going anti-clockwise according to my screen, which is Michael.
I'm here just to increase my knowledge, and because you're one of my favorite teachers, and I find the classes so helpful in progressing on the path and hopefully increase what minimal level of wisdom I have. That's
Very
why I'm
nice.
here.
Okay,
Thank you.
Brian and Shana, you can sort out the order yourself.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be with you and teaching, you know, your teachings for many years. I studied many years, and now I'm really.
I was just thinking, I can't see your lips moving, Brian and Shana. Anyway, carry on, Alia. Yeah, Alia, I know you from a long time ago.
Yes, yes. And I'm taking it deeper again to heal with my son. And also I'm an art education major now, and I am doing a project to help Buddhism, to bring mindfulness into the classroom. It's Sojourn on the Silk Road, and we found that the Silk Road went all the way up to Tibet. So I'm very grateful, and I'm just wanting to learn more. Perhaps it will help with that, but mostly with my son, who is still conflicted, and I want to heal that. So thank you.
Well, fingers crossed. Brian and Shana.
I'm not sure why Brian here is here, because I can't speak for him, but I think we're here for the same reason, is because we love your teachings. Your connection to Lama Zopa Rinpoche just feels very personal. You know, Stephanie and I did the Nyungne that years back with you, and you just have such a warm, I don't know, when you teach, I feel like I just feel like I'm in the presence of a Buddha. So that's why I'm here.
Oh. But what does Brian say? Are you just going to
She
say?
says
She said.
same thing, except I didn't attend the Nangye.
The Nyune. Okay. Why didn't you attend the Nyune, Brian?
Because I had responsibilities here to take care of our little critters.
Okay. I'm joking anyway. How about so I sort of like keep going around in the circle and then end up in the middle. Of course, you have no idea who's in the middle according to my screen, do you? So next one we've got is Pete Guinoso.
Well done. My name is Pete Guinoso. I am a yoga teacher, and I actually have been teaching retreats at Land and Medicine Buddha for the last 12 years for New Year's Yoga Retreat. And I'm a big fan of bodhicitta, and I want to learn more about it. I've been sharing bodhicitta with my yoga students, and I feel like our world's in need now more than ever for bodhicitta in our hearts. So thank you for having me.
Oh, that's
happy to be
fantastic.
here.
Yeah, good. Then Carol.
I'm Carol Curlat, and I am here in Soquel, and I'm new to Buddhism. I started about a year and a half ago, took your classes last spring, and I just want to continue to learn more and getting started along the path, and I really appreciate your teachings. I just feel better when I sit with you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Then Sally. gone. Okay, Alex, please.
Hi, good morning. I got an email last night from Land of Medicine Buddha, and I read that there'll be a class about bodhicitta or sutra teachings from Lam Rim, and I thought between today and April 17th, I thought maybe I'll sign up. And I had joined your class, Venerable, when you began this series with Lam Rim topics, I think some time ago.
Okay,
Um,
I thought you looked familiar.
yeah, so yeah,
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alex.
thank you.
Thanks, Andy and Herb.
We go way back.
Yeah.
Did new names with you and Jado Rinpoche, and just miss being up there and being able to go on retreats. And I just find these teachings, particularly the way that you do this from Lama Tsongkhapa, is just priceless, and just really miss you. I feel really off kilter when we're not doing this. And it just keeps everything in the forefront of my mind, which is very important to me. And I can't get enough of it. So just really happy to be with everyone and happy to be with you. I can't speak for Irv, but
Good seeing you, Venerable. Yeah, what she said. No, I mean, besides, just to add to that, Sandy's the one who introduced me to your teachings and all this knowledge, learning from you, and I'd like to, turn that into wisdom and every time, see your face, the way you teach, the humor, I mean, it makes it easy to grasp everything, and I really appreciate it. And, it's always good seeing you, and just every time I see you, it just gives me a smile on my face. So I thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Okay, well, anyway, so yeah, well, I guess I should say what I'm hoping for. Well, I mean, yeah, sort of bodhicitta is definitely a favorite. And then, we've gone through a lot on the bodhicitta already, but it's sort of like the foundation of everything else. And so then going through the six perfections, which is like the way that one would lead one's life on the basis of having bodhicitta, and also for, maybe that's a long way off actually having the real bodhicitta, but and that's like the kind of the direction you want to go, then the finding out about the six perfections, finding out about the Bodhisattva's way of life, trying to lead one's life in that way. That's I think that's really fantastic. So for me, it's like having to talk to you about it. I have to think about it beforehand, and yeah, it's fantastic, really. It's nice to have a break. Enjoyed the break, but it's also good to get back, and nice to see old and new faces. Right. Anyway, so thanks very much. And yeah, the thing is that just recently, some friends, or people connected with friends, passed away. I was thinking about that. Venerable Ingrid, cousin of mine called Sandy, Pam Caton's dad. And then, of course, when you think about it, like during these last few months, thousands of people, I don't know, would it be millions of people have died? Sometimes during wars, sometimes from illness, sometimes just from old age. I mean, you know, people die eventually. And that's all very sad, of course. In fact, it's just, it's awful, isn't it? It's really awful to lose somebody. And, but anyway, you know, we are still here. That's good, isn't it? So I've probably said this before, but anyway, something I heard Lama Zopa say several times. Something that Lama Yeshe used to say, which is the good thing about not having died is that we get to meet our old friends again. So that's it, isn't it? There's something poignant about that even, because here we are again, which is very nice. But this is not always going to happen, is it? So we have this life still, this precious human life. So precious. Having met with these teachings, having met with qualified teachers, you know, I mean, just it's amazing to be in the world. Of course, even in a world where the Buddha has been, even if it's not a world where there is the Buddha, but although that's sort of debatable, anyway, for all sort of conventional ways of looking at things, the Buddha Shakyamuni passed away many thousands of years ago, over 2,500 years ago. And when you think of what it means to be an enlightened being, and when you think of why the Buddha Shakyamuni would have come into this world in the first place, it's sort of quite strange to think that he would have come into the world and then passed away and then sort of like washed his hands of this world. Why would he? Why would he do that? If he had no choice, that would be another thing. Like for us, you die, you don't really have the choice to sort of hang around and carry on helping people in different forms. I mean, most of us don't, I think. But somebody like the Buddha, so who knows? I mean, this is actually some things that we talked about a long time ago, beginning of this course, towards the beginning. Buddha, the Buddha himself said, I mean, in the form of Adadara, that he would appear in the world as spiritual guides. And so, as my teacher Gentecho used to say, he didn't say which ones he would be, so you have to suspect all of them. You have to be suspicious of each of your teachers. Maybe this is Shakyamuni Buddha, maybe this is Shakyamuni Buddha, maybe all of them are. An enlightened being is capable of that. So anyway, we have this life still, which is amazing, and but it's because it's not going to last long. I mean, we know that, don't we? It doesn't last for long. We've all, I think I mean, I don't know, when did it start? When do you first begin to realize that time feels like it's moving faster? Now it's like, so here we are now, 69. Not 69, next year 70. if I live that long. So, you know, so I'm here with my mother, you know, living here with my mother. And it's like, okay, so it's Monday again. It's Friday again. It's Saturday again. It's like the weeks just go past so quickly. And then it's March. It's March now. Time goes so fast. Anyway, whether it's going fast or whether it's going slow, it's not gonna, we're not gonna last forever, are we? So what to do within that time? So one way to look at it is to make sure that, you know, to use the time there is left, whether it's another 20 years, another 10 years, another 5, another year, month, a week, a day, maybe it's today, it's going to all come to an end. This body is so fragile, isn't it? Fragile, as we say in the States. Fragile. Yeah, I was watching this. I don't know, it's sort of connected, but it also anyway, left a big impression on my mind. This show I was watching last night with my mother. It's called, you can see episodes of it on, well, anyway, you can see clips of it from on YouTube. Maybe not whole episodes, but anyway, it's called Surgeons. I think it's Surgeons at the Edge of Life, or maybe it's the Edge of Death. I can't remember which one. But anyway, last night they were following a couple of cases. Unbelievable what these doctors do. Cutting people open, like from completely, almost like down the whole length of the body. Taking these huge cancers out. And you look in there. I don't know what, I used to find it quite kind of, you know, yuck. I don't want to look at this. But it's really quite riveting, actually. But so they split them up, cut them open, and there's sort of like just all this stuff in there. And I was thinking, yeah, because they're really amazing because you know, they when they're trying to show you the kind of operation that's happening, it's all done it's very clear, you know, the different organs in different colors. But inside the body, it's pretty almost much the same color, pretty uniform in color. Yeah. And they have to like find out where everything is. I heard that when they were operating on Kaji Subramanian for gallbladder removal, it's supposed to be quite a straightforward thing, but it took them like a couple of hours to find the gallbladder. You can imagine, what is it kind of thing? Is this it? Is this it kind of thing? That's our human body. So anyway, things can go wrong. Anyway, I'm beginning to wonder a bit. I'm just trying to talk about how, you know, the life can come to an end at any time. So what do you do with the time that's left? Make sure to avoid anything you're going to regret, that's going to plague you as you're dying. And best, of course, is fill your life with bodhicitta. That's the main thing, really. I mean, really, everything we've been doing up to now, you could say, is for that. Lama Atisha said it's worth spending, I mean, eons even. It's worth it if it takes eons to generate that mind, to transform your mind into bodhicitta. So, okay, so this is the one thing I wanted to do. Besides, you know, I have to change this thing. I don't like seeing myself in the middle of the screen. Let's see. Can't do that. Do that. Okay, that'll do. Maybe not. Yeah, okay. Now I can see everybody a bit better. But I think Even further now. So anyway, so bodhicitta, right? So Sanskrit word, right? So bodhi, enlightenment, awakening, citta, the mind. So the awakening mind, in the sense of the mind, the kind of attitude, the kind of way of thinking, where you really, the only thing you want to do is to achieve enlightenment, because the only thing that you really want to do is to free others from suffering. The infinite mother sentient beings, kind mother sentient beings, to free them from suffering. So that's it. But okay, so I've just said it, but anyway, so what is bodhicitta? One person. Okay,
Hi.
we've got a preview. Let's see how things go. Alia?
The mind of the Buddha, that you think along those same teachings, that is where your mind is at.
Okay, so that sounds like a mind where you're completely absorbed in the teachings of the Buddha and the path that the Buddha taught, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then Shana, you had your hand up.
I've been doing the not every morning, but I was doing it really regularly and I kind of fallen off. I was doing the all-encompassing yoga mind that His Holiness had put, the short meditation. And the way he kind of like way it described was, there was like the conventional bodhicitta and the ultimate bodhicitta. And the way I took it was like the um the conventional bodhicitta was the one that turns into the moon disk, and that is basically your vows, like your level of vows that turn into that is making sure that, I mean, it's basically not harming, giving, not harming any other being, like the love of, like doing it for that. um um that's just the way the vows were, like the not harming, not killing, not stealing, not you're basically restraining from doing harm to all other sentient beings.
Yeah,
And
that's a big component of bodhicitta for sure, not to harm others and to help as much as you can. Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good.
and then the ultimate bodhicitta was the Vajra, that basically, that's when you actualize, I guess, um, that mind.
Well, in that practice, the all-encompassing yoga, all-encompassing mind yoga, the so conventional bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta. That's one way of putting it. Conventional bodhicitta
Emptiness, rather.
is the bodhicitta we're talking about, and the ultimate bodhicitta is just sort of it's the meditation on emptiness. Yeah. So that's why he says you try to cultivate that, sort of try to bring out that mind, and then imagine that the bodhicitta. Imagine it's in the form of a moon disk at your heart, and then meditate on emptiness, and then think that transforms into a Vajra standing on that moon. Yeah, that's it. And he always emphasized that. He always seems to think that's very important. So that's good. Yeah, it's always easy to get out of a habit, isn't it? I've always found it always easy to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of bodhicitta, as I mentioned before, and I think one of the things I reflect on is when I'm in yoga or meditation, I place my hands on my heart and I breathe up to my heart and I feel this sensation. And there's a kind of a hint of tears that are behind it that I find fascinating. And then I was so happy to read Buddhist text that talks about describing this, because I felt my way into it first. And so I look at bodhicitta as the awakened saddened heart, right? This heart connection of not only our suffering, but the suffering of the world, and our capacity to connect to that and move from that space of bodhicitta is kind of like what I see as the gateway to becoming a bodhisattva. Is kind of how I feel into it.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, that's all very good. Thank you. There is one very simple way to express it, which comes from Maitreya, who is we often refer to as the future Buddha. When Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings have completely vanished from the world, then after a while, Maitreya comes and does a similar kind of thing in terms of taking birth, education, gradually giving up worldly concerns and achieving enlightenment in Bodhikaya and teaching like Shakyamuni Buddha did. Yeah, so Maitreya, so he said, bodhicitta is wanting to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. It's as simple as that. Bodhicitta is Singipani Shinanje. Yeah, so bodhicitta is wanting to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, so that's good. And where we got to in the book, so this is the middle-length Lamrim. And if you don't have it, then what's the, I mean, actually, does everybody have it?
What's
Not
the name of
everybody.
the book? I'm sorry. What's the name of the book?
It's called oh, actually, let me have a look. Do you have the link for that, Michael? So you can put in the chat.
Yeah, I'll get one and put in the chat real quick. Just give me a second.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, because if I start looking for it, then I'll probably lose my place, lose where I am. I'm pretty lost anyway. So yeah, it's been published, and I don't know, but there used to be a bit of a discount for people on this course, basic program. Anyway, I'm pretty sure from before that we have the same page numbers, so we're on page 214. And so yeah, so just mentioning one of the ways of generating bodhicitta before actually going back into the text. So that's what they call the Gundiming Up Dune, the 7-step or 7-point cause and effect way of meditating on bodhicitta. So on the basis of equanimity, then number one is you recognize all sentient beings as being your mother. Then you think about how each of them on countless occasions actually have cared for us like our present mother. Of course, we all know that there are some people that don't have a very good relationship with their mother at all for various reasons, and we've talked about that kind of thing. But generally speaking, for the most part, human beings have a very special, feeling for their mother. So thinking, and because of the amazing things that your mother does for you in terms of giving you your life. Of course, you need both parents, but the one who. So, but anyway, she has that role. Then carrying you in the womb. So the discomfort and the pain of that. Then the pain of giving birth. So we've got this show called Call the Midwife in England. I don't usually watch it, but quite often I'll be my mum will be watching it. I'll be in the other room, and periodically you'll hear this screaming going on, and you know that she's watching Call the Midwife. So yeah, the incredible pain. And then everything kind of like total devotion to you when you can't fend for yourself, and then teaching you how to go to the toilet, teaching you how to eat, teaching you how to walk, encouraging you to walk, teaching you words, then giving you an education, feeding you all through that process. And so my mum's 92, getting on for 93, and I know it never stops. As long as the mother's alive, it doesn't stop. So every single sentient being has been kind like that. So the kindness, then repaying the kindness. So that means, since she has helped, each of them has done so much for me, when she's in need, it would be shameful for me to not help her when she needs that help. And then, so that's repaying the kindness. And so, what would be the best way to repay that kindness? It would be to lead them to the most perfect happiness, the happiness of enlightenment, and to lead to not just bring a sort of like temporary cessation of a particular problem, but to lead them completely beyond suffering forever, so there's never any more suffering. And then so then the heartwarming love, where there's not any extra meditation to do, no sort of extra things to think about. It's just based on that, then the way that sentient beings appear to you is in this very pleasing way, this sort of affectionate way. You just see them and it's like it lights up your life kind of thing, lights up your day kind of thing. Feeling of warmth. And then compassion, great compassion, wanting, understanding having a true understanding of the suffering that sentient beings are experiencing. So not just like feeling compassion for somebody that's got a headache or that's ill, whatever, and that but having compassion for all beings, because of recognizing that they, like oneself, are in cyclic existence, and so no matter how well things might be going for some of them, but still that won't last. And so even without going into all the details, just thinking about the suffering that there is in this world at the moment, and there are many people that aren't living in a state of war, are healthy, young, have everything that they need and so on, but that doesn't last. We have our karma, and unless you purify the karma, from this life, past lives, then it comes back again. The suffering comes back again. So it's really being able to see deeply into the suffering of others, not just a superficial. In other words, what they often say is, when you have real compassion, then your compassion is not just for the people who are sick and poor, but the people who are healthy and wealthy and powerful, feeling compassion for them. And then the special attitude where you don't just want others to be free of suffering. You see it, and it's not just that you want them to be free of that suffering, the suffering you can see, but you take responsibility you made the decision. I'm going to free them. I'm going to do this. I'm going to free them. And then how am I going to do that? At the moment, I can't. I really can't do it at the moment. I've made the commitment. I've made the promise. But at the moment, I can't. And yet, if I were to achieve enlightenment, I would have the ability. And so then, I mean, of course, you know, so so you have the decision, okay, I'm going to achieve enlightenment. But sometimes there can be a little bit of a, well, you know, very nice idea, but is it possible? And when you think about the nature of the mind, the sort of clear light, somehow inherently pure nature of the mind, and when you think about how particularly, you know, like first level somehow, the mental afflictions of grasping, attachment, and anger, hatred, jealousy, and all those things that make such a, you know, mess up our life so much. That all those are based on ignorance. Their foundation is ignorance. Their foundation is a mistaken way of thinking. And so, if you can develop the wisdom that really understands how things are, that can see through that mistake, then gradually through that wisdom, you can make those mental afflictions weaker and weaker until eventually they're gone completely. So you can completely, you know, purify the mind. There's a real unbelievable transformation that is possible. Yeah, so the connection, you know, between developing wisdom and being able to really get to the bottom of the mental afflictions so you can completely uproot them. Sometimes not so clear, but I think one thing that helps a lot is simply to recognize that whenever our mind is conflicted with these mental afflictions, you know, anger and so on, there's always a very strong sense of an I, some sort of like concrete, solid I. And in fact, you know, if you can, you know, bring that mind up, which we have so much experience of, you know, just sort of like focus your attention on how you normally think when you're thinking I this and I that. Especially, you know, if you can think back to a moment when you've been really upset about something. There's a feeling of an I that somehow doesn't depend upon our body and mind. Actually, you know, the two are intimately linked. Body and mind on the one hand, and then there's I. But there seems to be like an independent I that's the owner and controller of our body and mind. But if you look for such an I, you won't be able to find it. So we do exist, but not in the way we normally think that we do. We do exist, and if we look for an I that corresponds to the way that we normally think of ourselves, just instinctively, naturally, without being taught, if we look for that, you can't find it. You look in your mind, you can't find it. In your body, you can't find it. So anyway, this is something we've done meditations on before, and well, maybe I'll just mention because it's quite useful, really. So the way that His Holiness talks about it, simply speaking, so if you look for that I in your body, you know, so this is the I that's like in charge, right, controlling. If you look for it in your body, then it's almost like a joke to think that that I could be, you know, you could point it out in your foot or your leg or your hands. I mean, you know, that would be kind of like a joke, right? But you might have a feeling that somehow that I. If it's going to be anywhere, it would be maybe the brain or located in the brain. And yet, this is something that I should have researched a bit. But anyway, I'm sure on one of those videos of His Holiness meeting with various, scientists and philosophers, neuroscientists. I think there's one where he meets with neuroscientists, and so that would probably be the one where you'd find where he says you have a more detail on the research that's been done. But anyway, apparently, according to neuroscientists, neurosurgeons, there's in the brain there is nothing which is the central control. You've got all these different parts of the brain that work together and it all functions, but there isn't anything in the brain that's actually like the central controller. There just isn't. So that's really so that's sort of like a hint in the direction that you can't find an I that's controlling in the body. But then what about the mind? So His Holiness talks about it. So this is just reviewing things that if you've been coming to attending this whole thing, you'd already heard. But anyways, I find something useful to meditate on every day. So let alone like just bringing it up from time to time during our meetings. So His Holiness tends to talk about looking for the I by looking at the different levels of consciousness, more gross, more subtle levels of mind. Because long story short, if you identify that I that's controlling with a gross level of mind, well, what about when the more subtle levels of mind are operating? You'd have to say there's no I. Or if you were to identify the I with like for example, we talk about the clear light mind, which is supposed to be the most subtle level of mind. So if you're going to say, well, it must be that because that's the most subtle, but it's not always there. The clear light mind basically is there when you die, and if you've got the sort of developed your meditation abilities, then you can make it happen during your meditation. But the point is, it's not always there. So you'd have to say that the rest of the time when the clear light mind is not there, there's no I, which is clearly not the case, right? I mean, like, for example, when a person has fallen unconscious, you wouldn't say that the person doesn't exist anymore, would you? You say that person is there and they're unconscious. And in fact, in general, whatever level of consciousness is there, if we think of it from our own point of view or from the point of view looking at others, you're thinking, oh, that person's angry, that person's asleep, they're unconscious. Maybe if they're in an operation, they're completely out of it, and so on. Of course you don't think that they're dead, but also you don't think to yourself, oh, that person isn't there anymore. Which is interesting because actually I've got this book. It's right here, actually. I was really fascinated. This is a book by I know Seth, called Being You. A friend of mine insisted that I should read it, so I've read a bit of it. Definitely all. So right at the beginning, he talks about how right at the very beginning, like page 1, prologue, the very beginning of his book, he says, 5 years ago, for the third time in my life, I ceased to exist. I was having a small operation and my brain was filling with anesthetic. I remember sensations of blackness, detachment, and falling apart. ... So different people have different ideas about these things, I suppose. I mean, yeah. So that's one way of looking at it. Do you think that's helpful? Looking at it in terms of different levels of consciousness? Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. There's another way, which I've also talked about before, which is also very useful, I think. So this is like, so if you're going to identify that I with the mind, well, when we talk about our mind, there's like the past of the mind, there's the present mind, and then there's the future mind. So if I'm going to identify that I that's the controller with the mind, it would be, obviously I can't identify it with the past mind because it doesn't exist anymore. And I can't identify it with the future mind because that doesn't exist yet. So it's got to be the present mind. But then what is the present mind? If you mean like the mind of this life, or even the mind maybe of this year, or let's say today, okay? Because actually the mind before today is already gone, so can't identify with that. Then the mind of tomorrow onwards hasn't happened yet, so can't be that. So it would have to be today's mind. But also today's mind, what's that? Today, I mean, like for me, it's what I call it is nearly 10 to 5 in the afternoon. So, like everything up until 5, no, not 5 yet. Everything up until 4 has already gone. Everything from 5 onwards has yet to happen. So it's got to be within this hour, right? So I'm sure you've, even if you haven't heard this before, then you see where we're going, because you can continue with that right down to this minute. So this minute also has got the seconds that have already passed, the seconds that have not yet happened. So you end up having to come to like this second. But even this second has got the part which is gone and the part which is yet to come. And no matter how finely you measure it, there's going to be a beginning, a middle, and end. The beginning is like past, the end has not yet happened, and you're in the middle. And then so basically you can never find even a mind that you can identify that I with. You can't even find it. Can't even find that. So anyway, that's a way to meditate on, or a couple of ways to meditate on how it is that the I that we normally think exists, which seems always to be like the controller, it's having this sort of solid concrete existence. You cannot find it in the body and mind. We exist, but when you look for that, you can't find it. And so what this can quite easily take you to, without a lot of thought, is the conclusion. Okay, so when I think I, every time I think I, whenever I think I, it always seems to me that there is an I which is the controller, sort of somehow independent of my body and mind, independent of anything. Just I. The stronger the emotion, the more there is a sense of an I that is completely unconnected with anything else. So that's the real I. Lama Zopa used to call it the real I. So he would always say, train in mindfulness that there is no real I. And so when you're training in mindfulness, because this is something you can do, you can just choose today, okay, I'm going to mainly focus on mindfulness that there's no real I. So what that means is cultivating this constant awareness that when you're thinking I this and I that, that I, which seems to have such a concrete solid existence, that I doesn't exist. There's no real I. And the more you cultivate that mindfulness, the more that has a sort of the effect of making the mental afflictions weaker generally, and also specifically and this is something we can just try to find from our own experience, specifically, so long as you maintain that awareness or that mindfulness, there's no real I. So long, the mental afflictions won't arise. And when they do arise, it's because you've lost that kind of awareness, or somehow, anyway, it's a little bit like the scale, the size of a scale. You know, the more there's that awareness, the less there's going to be of the mental afflictions. If the circumstances provoke, like a strong emotional reaction, then that will mean that that wisdom, that mindfulness, has been swamped and becomes weaker. So it's all very much linked. I think completely linked. And it's not just me. I mean, that's what they teach, what the Lamas teach. That's what the Buddha taught. Okay, so and that was all to do with if you're going to decide that you want to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, to free them from suffering, to lead them to true happiness, then you want to be sure that it's possible. So meditating on the nature of the mind, and then also meditating on emptiness, because meditating, there's no real I. That's meditating on emptiness, meditating on selflessness. Meditating on selflessness is what actually purifies the mind. It's a bit like, when you talk about the mind being somehow ultimately pure, where all of the sort of mess in the mind is just temporary, fleeting, just like a glass of dirty water, ultimately somehow, or inherently, or I don't know what would be the best word, there's pure water there, which is unmixed with the dirt. The nature of the water isn't mixed with the dirt. You can say that it's mixed with the dirt, okay, I mean, of course, we would say that, but somehow within that there is pure water. And so you need to understand, well, first of all, that it is pure, the water is pure, but you would also need to know how you're going to get that dirt out, because it could be that that dirt is not inherently part of the water, but if there's no way of getting rid of it, then it's as good as if it as being just inherently dirty. But with so when there's a method for getting rid of the dirt, then that sort of potential can be actualized. And so in the same way with the mind, those mental afflictions are not inherently part of the mind, and also you can get rid of them through meditation on the ultimate reality, meditating on emptiness, meditating on selflessness. So that's the thing. That was the thing. So I thought it would be good to just to talk a bit about what the bodhicitta is that is being mentioned here on page 100. No, last back. 214. So where we got to was having talked about bodhicitta like that, then there is the measure it having arisen. So the measure of it having arisen, this is sort of, in a way, it's I know it's the way the text talk, the language of the text. What it means is, it's a bit like, so how do you know that your meditation on bodhicitta is really working, has really worked? So you've actually got it. The measure of it having arisen, the measure of it having been generated. In other words, the measure of you having actually got that bodhicitta attitude through your meditation. So actually, there's not much explanation. It just says that should be understood from what was already explained above. So I actually above. I mean, Well, anyway, I'll tell you what His Holiness says and what his Gish Jampakatsa says, because I don't remember that. I think in a way, if you've looked at the, if you've learned the meditations on bodhicitta, it's sort of, it's kind of obvious what would have to be happening in your mind so that you knew, yeah, I've done it. I got that bodhicitta. But anyway, let's just see what His Holiness says. So this is what His Holiness says. What it means is, when you see any sentient being, so in our life, what does that mean? You know, any human being, any animal. So animals including depending on which part of the world you are, there are certain favorite animals to hate, aren't there? How about kind of moth-eaten rat that's just been crawling around your bins? A lot of people would feel quite a feeling of like disgust and hatred. And then for sure we have, I mean, speaking of myself anyway, you know, there's so many, there's, well, quite a few people whose name you hear, you see on the TV, being talked about on TV, on the internet and so on. And it's just almost like you just like this feeling of disgust, you know, which is that's not bodhicitta, right? That's not bodhicitta. The so automatically, when you see any sentient being, including all those ones which normally, you know, you would feel like repulsion towards, then the thought arises, whichever one you see, instead of like disgust, automatically the thought arises wanting that person to achieve happiness and enlightenment. You know, happiness, not just any happiness, but the ultimate, the most perfect happiness of enlightenment. So maybe that's like gives you an idea. That's a very good indicator, isn't it? You know, we read about it, we talk about it, we listen, we do the meditations. But what about when you actually meet with another sentient being? Yeah, so anyway, it's a very useful gauge, isn't it? You know, when you hear certain names and it's like that sort of like feeling of repulsion, see certain beings, that kind of attitude, somehow you know, oh, I haven't got bodhicitta yet. I haven't got bodhicitta yet. Still a way to go. It's gradual though, of course, you know. I think we get better. I mean, you know, even if you've got to the point where you hear those names or you see that and you notice that your attitude is like the opposite of bodhicitta, just noticing that and then you know, trying to think some different way, noticing it, thinking to yourself, oh, that's not right, then that's yeah, you wanted to ask a question?
I had a very mystical experience. I have an apartment that has roaches, and I was doing what I can to get rid of the roaches. And then I had a roach come to me, okay? And see my prayer hands? These prayer
Oh
hands?
yeah, I can see.
Yeah. So it climbed onto my prayer hands and looked at me. And I knew it said, really? And I went, okay, no more killing roaches. And I stopped. because it's such a mystical thing that it would climb on my prayer hands like that.
Yes, yes,
Hit
yes.
me. It was trippy, but no more killing anything anymore.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Roach.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So s- so that I think there are other things. Oh yeah, seeing sentient beings wanting to be happy, seeing sentient beings automatically wanting to be free of suffering. I don't know if it came up in this text, but in the Bodhisattva, the Shantideva, Bodhisattva Shantideva, he talks about, any sentient being I see, then I will perceive, then I will have the thought, I'm going to achieve enlightenment depending upon this sentient being. So sort of recognition of the kindness, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a sort of little bit of meditation, isn't it? So, yeah, I think when you think to yourself, I'm going to achieve enlightenment, depending on this sentient being, it's reminding you, isn't it, of the huge kindness of each sentient being. So it's not just the kindness of when they were our mother, which is what you emphasize in what's emphasized in the 7 cause and effect meditation, is the very fact that they're a sentient being means that they are who makes enlightenment possible for me. Then what Geshe Jama Gyatso said, which is also useful. So he talked about the measure of having actually transformed your mind into bodhicitta is that the wish to achieve enlightenment is something that arises very naturally, effortlessly, without having to go through the different steps of the meditation. It just comes up naturally. So what that means is that if you look at Lama Tsongkhapa's 3 principal paths, there's one verse there that talks about again the measure of having generated renunciation. So renunciation is the whatever we usually think of it as meaning. It's in these teachings, it's the mind that sees the suffering nature of cyclic existence and wants to achieve liberation from it. So there, Lama Tsongkhapa says, when having thought about the various defects of being in cyclic existence, so always being under control of karma and mental afflictions, not having any choice about what happens to you really, and certainly no choice to speak of concerning where we're going to go after this life. When you see the defects of that, the awful nature of being in such an existence, and day and night without ever having any kind of interest in what we might call samsaric pleasures, in other words, just ordinary pleasures, and instead day and night always thinking, always wanting to achieve liberation from psychic existence. At that point, you have generated renunciation. It would be the same with bodhicitta. When day and night all you want to do is achieve enlightenment for the sake of those mother sentient beings, then at that point you've actually generated bodhicitta. So what do you think? If you've got bodhicitta, if you were wondering whether you've got bodhicitta and you realize you still have some selfish thoughts, does that mean that you don't have bodhicitta? Yes. Pete?
Bodhicitta is always there, just waiting for us to tap into it. I mean, that's how I feel to it. I think we have mental afflictions, and then underneath those mental afflictions is there, always there, just waiting for us to touch and breathe into it and feel it.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of truth in that. Yes. Hmm. It's something we could say is there in the similar way to which we could say our own enlightenment is always there. It's just that even though it's there, I guess we have to say it's there in the form of a potential. So it's something that's always there to tap into, but not everybody knows how to tap into it. And even ourselves, even though it's there, we get lost, we lose our way. So there is, despite the fact that it's always there is, a path to follow so that it's like always there in a way that's like recognizable, if you see what I mean. Because, it's not just us, right? Like those people in the world whose name, when you hear it, makes you turn your nose up kind of thing. Even they have exactly that same potential. And so we know that it's possible to lose one's way. And so it's from that point of view that it still makes sense to, like really put all one's energy into a path that's going to mean that it's you can feel it there all the time. Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh has a beautiful quote that's super simple. He says, compassion is a verb. That makes me laugh and smile whenever I think about that, because it's an understanding that the more we do it, the better we are at it. And I feel
Yeah.
like it's true with bodhicitta as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like a verb in the sense that it implies doing something, not just sitting there, maybe. I don't know. So yeah, anyway, so that's the measure of it having arisen. So so the measure of having it would be another way of putting that. The measure of having it would be, like just arising automatically, spontaneously, and all those nice things. So then separate from the Bodhisattva vows, which is another thing which I guess comes a bit later, there is a particular ceremony that one can attend that's offered sometimes. So Lama Tsongkhapa talks about that here for a particular ceremony for generating the wishing mind. I think he calls it the aspiring mind. Yeah, anyway. So there are two types of bodhicitta. When we talk about conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta isn't actually bodhicitta, but it's still called bodhicitta. I can't remember the exact reason why, but I think it's to do with the fact that when you're following the bodhisattva path, you got the bodhicitta and compassion and loving kindness and so on the one hand, but you also need to have the wisdom and these two are like the wings of a bird, so that bird can fly anywhere with the two wings. But if either of them is missing, they just can't do that. So in order to achieve enlightenment, we need those two wings, the wisdom and, you could say wisdom and compassion, you could say wisdom and bodhicitta. Sometimes you'll see wisdom and method, where the method is the umbrella term for the compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, those things. So that's why the wisdom is referred to as ultimate bodhicitta. It's sort of like, this is probably not precise, but somehow anyway, it's talking about the wisdom realizing emptiness. That's what it means. So, but then also when we're talking about the two bodhicittas, in many contexts, it refers to wishing bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. Wishing bodhicitta is bodhicitta, but not, but with no sort of like, in a sense, active practice of the six perfections. So then it's called wishing bodhicitta. When that bodhicitta is combined with the practice of the active practice of the six perfections, then it's called engaging bodhicitta. So here, when it talks about the ritual for adopting bodhicitta, then that's talking about wishing bodhicitta. You can tell from as you go through this, it's that's what it's talking about. And this is quite elaborate, quite an elaborate explanation, because it's quite an important ceremony, quite a ceremony. It's not given all the time. I mean, we can meditate on bodhicitta anytime, whether it's wishing or engaging, you know. But the particular ceremony means that depending upon like the words of the ceremony and the various activities in the ceremony, particularly depending upon a lama who is living within that practice, who's versed with these practices also, then you make up, you don't just generate the mind wanting to achieve enlightenment, but you combine it with the promise, the commitment never to give up this attitude until you achieve enlightenment. So that's what all this is about. And I think that, well, let me think. So in India, when they do this, it's sort of always a very special occasion. And when you go in the morning to take part in this ceremony, like with His Holiness or something like that, then they have, you know, like many strings of garlands of marigold flowers, usually orange ones and yellow ones. That's very popular in India. Anyway, so yeah, I don't think they would normally, if you didn't have something quite ornate like that or quite fancy like that kind of thing, then it wouldn't really, they wouldn't really do it wouldn't really be a wishing mind ceremony. So anyway, let's just go through it. No, I've lost where I am. There it is. So now, so for the ritual for adopting it, first of all, there's it seems to be saying the same thing, the way to adopt it by means of ritual. So you've got 3 points: receiving that which has not yet been received, guarding that which has been received without it degenerating, the method for restoring it if it has degenerated. So generating bodhicitta in the first place, then preventing it from declining, and then if something does happen, so it does degenerate, then how to restore it. So then for the first one, getting that generating that wishing mind when you haven't had it before. So this has got 3 things to talk about. It says the object from whom it's taken. What that means is the person from whom you take it. Then the person who takes it, that's yourself, and then the ritual by which it's taken. So then for the object, so it says here, the assertions of the earlier masters said, the earlier masters said that it is not enough for the preceptor, the person who's giving the guiding the ceremony, giving the ceremony, to possess the vow of aspiring bodhicitta and to be abiding in the training, must also possess the vow of engaging bodhicitta. So I have to look at this again for next week, but people talk about aspiring vows. First of all, he's got saying it's aspiring bodhicitta, where I usually say wishing bodhicitta, right? But also Yeah, so anyway, there's reasons why I prefer to call it wishing bodhicitta, because engaging bodhicitta and wishing bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta both are characterized by the aspiration for enlightenment and to benefit all sentient beings. So anyway, wishing bodhicitta, to abide in the trainings means to abide in the, usually that means abide in the practice of the six perfections. But here it might mean there are particular precepts, not vows exactly, precepts. Once you've generated this mind in the context of this ritual, which has the promise to never let go of it, until you achieve enlightenment. Not like when you achieve enlightenment you give it up, but anyway, you're gonna keep going with till you achieve enlightenment. There are certain precepts to help you make to help you make sure that you can stay on track. You can actually keep going with that promise. So that's probably what that's talking about. But the vow of it's a very strange thing actually, because you see, you've got this word in Tibetan, dompa, and literally what it means is more like some kind of restraint. It has a sort of connotation of restraint. So restraining from doing things that are like opposite from what you're trying to do with the practice of bodhicitta. So so that's that word dompa. So sometimes people translate it as ethical restraint. So that's quite good actually, although it's not very commonly used. But an ethical restraint, restraint on the line in terms of some ethics, ethical restraint. But then you see, it's also commonly translated as vow, and it's also commonly translated as ordination. So we talk about monastic ordination, tantric ordination, bodhisattva ordination, receiving bodhisattva, and more commonly maybe you've got the monastic vows or pratimoksha vows, then the bodhisattva vows, tantric vows. That's maybe the most commonly used one, vows. But it's also very strange because really, like for example, if you take the bodhisattva vows, as they say, there are 18 root vows. They also talk, this is the language that you hear, and it becomes very confusing. So then it's like you've got 18 bodhisattva vows. There's not just the one bodhisattva vow that you've taken, but actually in the text is very clear there are 3 vows. You've got the pratimoksha vow, the vow of individual liberation, which includes the lay vows and the monastic ones. So you got that. Then you've got the bodhisattva vow, dompa sum, 3 restraints: the pratimoksha one, the bodhisattva one, and then the tantric one. So it's somehow quite it's sort of just I don't know, like wishy-washy or sort of like vague way of thinking and talking to use the word vow for like everything kind of thing. So really, if you're going to say vow, okay, so pretty much a vow. What is that for? Vow, not z vows, no z at the end. Tantric vows. And then in the case of the bodhisattva vow, there would be 18 root downfalls. But everybody's still going to call them bodhisattva vows. I know they are. Probably going to say 18 root ones and 46 secondary vows. I think we can't do anything about it, but at least if we understand, okay, when you hear people talking about 18 bodhisattva vows, okay, what they're talking about is the 18 bodhisattva, 18 root downfalls, which is about, a bit like saying, I suppose, the 18 principal rules you're meant to follow once you've taken the Bodhisattva vow. Right. And then there are 46 secondary rules. They call them nieche, which is something like faults. So a downfall, when they call it a downfall, it means that when you break it, then it's a downfall. It brings you, causes a downfall. You have all sorts of negative karma, and you have to purify that and so on. Anyway, I don't want to keep going on about this, but anyway, can't really avoid it. Now I've completely lost my page. I must have leaned on it. Can anybody remember what page I said we were on? Or what page are you on in the book?
You started at 214.
214. So I'm now on page 300. 214. I'm always doing this. Here we are. So anyway, this is one of my pet peeves. So just be aware that there is this sort of vagueness going on. So aspiring bodhicitta, call it bodhicitta, aspiring bodhicitta if you want, but and to be honest, I mean, Kosha Rinpoche used to talk about aspiring vows and engaging vows. So, but for me, that's I find it a bit strange, because when we talk about bodhisattva vows, that means the engaging vows, where you have the 18 root downfalls to avoid and so on. There isn't anything like that for the aspiring or wishing bodhicitta, but there are these precepts, so maybe you can call those vows. I don't know. I find it a bit confusing to express it in this way. So anyway, the earlier masters said that it is not enough for the preceptor to possess the vow of aspiring bodhicitta, which I think we can take to mean it's not just that they also have done this ceremony with their teacher. They should also be abiding the trainings, and to be abiding the trainings, which would be the precepts associated with that ritual. They also should have the vows of engaging bodhicitta. In other words, the bodhisattva vows. Whenever you see the vow or the vows or vow of engaging bodhicitta, what it means is the bodhisattva vows. Okay, then the person takes it. So that's we have to check whether we are the right person to take this. So it says all gods, nagas, and so forth who are physically and mentally suitable to generate that mind, they're also the suitable basis for doing it with the ceremony. That's straightforward, isn't it? Clear? Yeah. If they can do that meditation, then they can also do the ceremony. Then the commentary on difficult points of the lamp for the path says, and I'm not sure about that. It says Lambda Deba. It means the commentary to the lamp of the path. So the lamp for the path is by Lama Atisha, and he also composed a commentary to it, his own commentary on his own text. So that's should be what this is referring to. I don't know about this difficult points. It's not in the Tibetan. I don't know why. Maybe, but anyway, it's according to Geshe Jamagatso. Anyway, it's Lama Atisha's own commentary to his Lamp of the Path. Repulsed by cyclic existence, mindful of death with wisdom and great compassion. So the vow taker, the person who's taking this, attending this ceremony, taking part in this ceremony, should be someone who has gained a little experience, at least, of transforming their mind into bodhicitta by training in the stages of the path as explained above. Yeah. So, it's pretty straightforward. You've gone through this kind of teaching, you've done some meditation, and somehow you feel, yeah, I want to achieve enlightenment as equals Indian beings, and I want to strengthen that with this ceremony. So you're okay to do this. Then the ritual. So this has also got three things: the preparatory ritual, actual ritual, and the concluding ritual. So for the preparatory one, you've got the refuge, then accumulating merit, and training in the attitude. So we'll see what the attitude is when we get to it. So with the going for refuge, not just ordinary going for refuge, is the special going for refuge. So that's going to be the special. Oh, it's nearly time. Let's see. We might be able to read through this. Yeah, so it's going to be not just refuge, but somehow refuge with a special, bodhicitta flavor to it. So what does it say? It says clean and isolated place. So when it says isolated place, it doesn't mean to say that this ceremony has to take place somewhere up in the mountains or, in the desert or something like that, somewhere isolated in that place. From my experience, I would say what it means is a place which is somehow where you're not going to have people just walking in and out and interrupting and disturbing. There might be things going on around it, and there might even be a whole city around you, but somehow you've got a space that you can hold for the ceremony. Then smear it with the 5 cow substances. So we wouldn't get away with that in the West. You wouldn't believe this if you've already come across the idea, then okay. But so the 5 cow substances, they are urine, cow's urine, their dung, the milk, curds made from the milk, and butter. And it's all like urine and dung in particular, also the milk, hasn't, fallen on the ground. So I don't know how you do that, but anyway, people do that. And I tell you, it's quite interesting. Who is it? Anyway, I think Gijam Gepsa was saying, he spent some of his life living with some Brahmins, the Indian Brahmins, and he said they always, every day, they used the cow's dung to clean the floor, to clean the place out, and it's not uncommon. So it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's not very nice to slip up in this stuff. We used to play in fields where it was quite common for one of us to slip up and get covered with the cow's dung, but somehow it's not considered to be dirty. So anyway, you can get pills that have got these 5 substances. Anyway, so the point is to make it clean. So you clean an isolated place, so that would be sweeping it out, and then smear it with the 5 cow substances. So ideally you would do that. I've never heard of this being done even in India, but that's what this is what Lama Tsongkhapa describes it. Then anoint it with exquisite perfumed water such as sandalwood to overcome the smell of the dung. Maybe not. Yeah, it's funny also because it doesn't smell. It's not smelly. I mean, I've never really sort of like got up close, but if you walk through a field with fresh cow's dung, it doesn't give off this awful smell like if you were walking past somewhere where a dog has just done a poop. It's kind of like really disgusting, right? It's not like that. Interesting. So anoint it with exquisite perfumed water such as sandalwood water, and scatter fragrant flowers. Yeah, fragrant flowers. Then I don't know what that's about. Then it says set out representations of the 3 jewels, and it says metal statues. And when you look this word up, it can be metal, but I don't think that's really what Lama Tsongkhapa meant, that it had to be metal statues. So Geshe Jama Gyatso explains it could be a statue, whatever it's made of, it doesn't matter, I don't think. Or a tsata, one of those little images that they turn out by the 1,000. Okay, so, and then images of bodhisattvas. And what I meant to do is, and I'll see if I remember, I'll look. I was given a little image of the always crying bodhisattva. When my teacher gave that to me, it was like he was giving me something very precious, and it always feels like something very precious. See if I can find that. It'd be nice to make, distribute that. And images of bodhisattvas. Okay, so I mentioned that. Okay, well, anyway, so the 3 jewels. So that means Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. For the Buddha, you've got the statues. For the Dharma, a text. Then for the Sangha, images of bodhisattvas. And it says on a throne, a table, or a raised platform. So like on an altar, or anyway, somewhere elevated. Do the preparatory ritual with items such as canopies and flowers, and they really do use these things as valuable as possible, as well as music, and they really do use those things in when they're doing it really sort of the full thing in India. I can't remember ever having taken part in such a ceremony in the West. I probably have, but I can't remember. Then arrange a throne for the teacher and also adorn it with flowers, not on where they're going to seat, but there's the backrest, so there, and the table in front and all that. The accumulation of merit is done by paying respect to past masters and the Sangha by giving a torma offering cake to the elemental spirit. So I looked at, I usually look at the English along with the Tibetan. It doesn't mention about past masters. It talks about like higher guests. So the higher guests would be the Arya Sangha, Bodhisattva Sangha, Bodhisattva Sangha. Sangha, although Lama Zopa always used to use the word Sangha just for the monks and nuns, he would say the Sanghas. But here, when we talk about Buddha and Sangha, mainly the Sangha refers to, in general, it would refer to those who have actually internalized the Dharma, so they've actually achieved those high levels of realization, the truth of the path, the truth of cessation, and so on. And also here in particular, you'll see, I think it mentions it as we're going through this, particularly it's talking about the Bodhisattva Arya Sangha. So Arya Bodhisattvas basically is what it means, Arya Bodhisattvas. Arya Bodhisattva is somebody who is a Bodhisattva Sangha, right, who has those realizations. And by giving a torma offering cake to the elemental spirits. I don't know much about that. It's called they call it chasum, and I remember Gin Wongdu doing it in the room. We were sharing rooms one time, and he said sometimes when you go somewhere and think like you're not sleeping so well, when you first arrive, not sleeping so well, things seem a little bit kind of like upset, sort of agitated, then you make this chasum offering, and it can sort of settle things down. And it's called chasum. Chasum is 3 parts, and it's so cool because the dharma itself has 3 parts. 3 parts for 3 types of guests. And the only thing I can remember about it, I didn't pay much attention to what he said. I should have done, but I didn't, and make notes, and then I would remember. But anyway, what I can remember is part of it was carrots, bits of carrot. And he said, yeah, that's it. That's what we do usually. I don't think it was just carrots, but carrots were definitely part of the torma that he put together. It's just a little plate with a few little bit things on it, and there's some words to recite and so on. So I think maybe better stop there, or should I just finish reading to the end of this section? It shouldn't take much longer, because So if you don't have any offerings at all, then as described in the Good Eon Sutra, the Bhadrakalpika Sutra, it can even be done by offering scraps of cloth, something very simple. I'd have thought that a mandala offering would do, but anyway, it doesn't mention that here. If you do have offerings, then they should have been attained through great effort and honesty and so on, without deceit. I don't know why it says great effort. I mean, generally speaking, anything that we have, we have made effort in the practice of generosity in past lives to be able to own it now. But anyway, without deceit, not stolen, and so on, and should be arrayed in such a way that your friends cannot help but marvel. When a teacher was asked to confer the mind generation, which is this, by Tibetan teachers in Mangyul and Samye, he reportedly said that it did not arise through inferior offerings. So for him, it was very important that to do this ceremony, you needed to have some, you need to have these very elaborate offerings. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And I think it's a lot to do with, like the creation of merit. You have to have a lot of merit to be able to do this. He also said that a consecrated statue of the main master of the teachings, in other words, Shakyamuni Buddha, was imperative as a representation, and at least the verse summary of the perfection of wisdom should be used as a text. Yeah, so there's different perfection of wisdom texts. You've got the, I don't know, 100,000, 20,000, 8,000. Those are the three main ones they call the three Mother Sutras. So can use those. Then the assembly of Aryas is invoked. So you imagine that they all come. The student are washed and well dressed. Yeah, clean clothes, with the hands joined like that. Then is encouraged by the Guru to generate clear faith in the excellent qualities of the merit field, so the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, that faith coming from the depth of one's heart. And then slowly, anyway, without hurrying, do the 7-limb practice. If you're doing this kind of thing with His Holiness, he always does the 7-limb practice that comes from the King of Prayers, the first 2 or 3 pages, 10 verses or so of the King of Prayers. And imagine that he is in the front of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, so in front of each of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And that's really very important, when you're doing it, to of course you're imagining it, but actually there's this saying that there's 2 things really. So there's the saying that if wherever you imagine the Buddha is there. But actually all enlightened beings are everywhere all the time. So somehow for our minds, it's easier to imagine them all there in this form, the form of Buddha Shakyamuni and, all of the Sangha, all of the Buddhas and all the Sangha. Imagine they're actually there. Whenever the thought arises, I can't see them, they're maybe not really there. It's like that's just a distraction. Don't follow it. Don't follow that thought. Just have that sense of them actually being there. Okay, so then you have kind of to sit there with your refuge in bodhicitta until next week. Oh, actually, not next week, the week after. Okay? Okay, good. So if we can finish with some dedication prayers, please, Michael. Yeah, good. So if you scroll down, has it got the longer one? Yes, please, this one. Due to all past, present, and future merits collected by me and all the merits of 3 times collected by numberless Buddhism, numberless sentient beings, may bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all sentient beings of 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me. May it be generated. I was trying to make it scroll up on my computer, but of course I'm not controlling it. May it be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantha Madra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. Due to all the past, present, and future merits claimed by me, the number of Buddhas and the number of sentient beings which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state, which is completely empty of existing from its own side. By myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. As long as any sentient being has not been liberated, may I abide to help them, even though I myself achieve highest enlightenment. By merely seeing, hearing, thinking about, or remembering me, as well as by touching me or talking to me, may all suffering instantly be pacified, and may there be happiness forever. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the arm of patience that is never discouraged, incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay, so thanks very much. Thanks for your patience. We went over really a bit too much, actually. I mean, okay for me, but you've got your day ahead of you. So.
And no class next week, right?
Right, yeah, no class next week. Yeah, great.
Cheers.
But the next week. Boo. Okay, see you then.